FinTech innovation has been absolutely incredible in recent months, and we've witnessed significant upgrades to the traditional processes that are typical in the financial services sector. In this panel titled From Open Banking to Embedded Finance, the Future of FinTech and AI for Finance, we have Eran Vitkon from Finastra and Shafir from WideOps to discuss FinTech industry and technology evolution. Eran Vitkon is the head of open finance at Finastra, responsible for innovative open banking solutions. Finastra is one of the largest fintech companies in the world with a broad portfolio of solutions for financial institutions. They have approximately 55 global office locations, and in Israel, approximately 300 employees. Shafir, the CTO at WideOps. WideOps is a premier Google Cloud partner, and they help companies across the industries to onboard to Google Cloud. So Eran, let's start with you. Could you tell us a little bit more about Finastra and what you're focused on?
Sure. Finastra, as you mentioned, is a big animal, and the core assets of the company are the products that we sell to banks. Some of them are legacy systems that are in the bank for the last 30 years, 20 years, and we are acting in all various of the verticals that we see at the banks. We are in the lending, in the core, in the payments, and other areas as well. And the shift that the company did was to build a layer of a platform on top of these core products that we don't touch, that will allow fintech to collaborate better with the banks through our products. So that infrastructure is called fusionfabric.cloud, and I'm part of that group responsible to write these APIs in a proper manner, responsible to engage with the fintech in a way that will allow them to connect easily. And we give the ability for fintech to connect to as many banks as we sold to behind the scene, as opposed to go one by one, bank by bank, and try to connect to a legacy system, which is very complicated. And what we are trying to do at Finastra now is to shift from this building block to the orchestration building block above it, which is commonly known as banking as a service, trying to take more responsibilities into an holistic solution so that it is not only a game of an API, it's a game of a use case. What is it that I can do for you? Is it car loans? Is it a mortgage? What is it that you do regardless of your bank, and then the financial service that comes along with it?
Interesting. Thanks for that context for the audience there. And Guy, Google Cloud offers a number of solutions. Can you elaborate for the audience what makes WideOps unique in fintech and for financial institutions that would be considering cloud migration?
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about Google Cloud and WideOps, as you cannot actually separate those two when we're talking about our work. And as we say, we work better together. So Google was born as a digital native company, and everybody expects by extension that Google Cloud is for digital native companies and digital native customers. But that is not true for the last 2 to 3 years. 2 years ago, Thomas Kurian, known as TK, has arrived to Google as a CEO of Google Cloud. TK actually came from Oracle, so he understands the enterprise and the traditional financial business. And by the way, his brother is the CEO of NetApp, so I'm sure it's a fun family dinner at the Korean house. So Thomas Kurian decided to establish a dedicated division within Google Cloud for fintechs and traditional fintech companies and enterprises, and focus on that area, of course, without leaving the digital natives aside. that is comprised of professional services, business management, and so on, and of course, dedicated solutions for the traditional enterprises and the traditional financial institutions. So Google sees its business as a multi-cloud service. Google is working towards a multi-cloud solution. In that way, traditional enterprises and fintechs can choose of the best in breed, meaning they can take the best they see in different clouds. And Google supports that with solutions like Anthos, allowing Google solutions to run in any cloud. And for example, BigQuery Omni, which is an enterprise data warehouse solution for analysis of huge data sets. And that can actually run in any cloud solution. So everybody can choose the best in breed and take the best from all clouds, which is very important for traditional and fintech.
Great, thanks, Guy. So the topic of our panel, inclusive in banking. Eran, this one is going to be for you. It'd be interesting if you could tell us a bit about the evolution within the industry that's taken place from open banking days 2017, 2018 through till now.
Yeah, a lot had happened, and I put my big bet on open banking, almost lost my position for doing that. So a little bit disappointed from the pace of adoption of open banking. However, it is happening, just significantly slower than expected, but it is happening. At the beginning, I thought that the change is so significant on the business level that everyone will change. And in fact, we do see change. Visa, for example, acquired Plaid, but it didn't work out. And now they acquired a company named Tink. Visa are moving away of cards because they realize that card is diminishing and they need to have something else. MasterCard had won an operator bid in the Nordic countries in Europe because of the same reason. Cards are going to have a battle with account-to-account payments. The open banking was supposed to open the door for that battle, but the disappointment is that banks were sluggish on the implementation, highly technical, but not really doing any offensive act, only defensive, only compliance, only the minimum bare. I was expecting the small banks to use the opportunity and say, here, you can open this and that with me. Leave your big account with your, leave your account with the big bank. It's okay. And still you can do business with me because of the consent that you will give me to access your account. These banks never done it for reason I cannot really understand. It's beyond me. However, if you look at open banking as a regulation, it was a regulation for plumbing. It was not led by a use case. It was led by API. API is not a use case. APIs are building blocks to integrate faster, to integrate simpler, but API is not the use case. Obviously, when you looked at the UK open banking, the very first use cases that we saw were PFM, personal finance management. So an application that connects to your bank or bank's account and gives you an holistic view of your account data in one place. But what was the business model behind it? Referrals. Hey, we see that on your cables, you can make cheaper if you go to the other company. That's not a strong use case. A strong use case will come now with the evolution of banking as a service with the following example. If I am an Uber driver, Uber is the engagement point for me for my financial activities. Uber will issue a card for me so that they can pay me instead of paying to my account. They will pay to my card. If I don't have an account with a bank, and it's possible, it happens, in the USA, Uber is the biggest issuer of cards for Uber drivers because of that situation. So Uber for driver would like to issue a card so that they can pay the driver. Uber will give the driver a car leasing so that he can drive a better, or she can drive a better car. So the evolution that we see is from building block that we call an API to a building block that is called use case. What is it that I'm trying to do? How am I improving something? And that use case, in most cases, is not a pure financial use case. It is, I'm buying a house. In order for me to buy a house, I need a mortgage. In order for me to take a mortgage, I need to bring my account information from the last 90 days. And I will not leave the engagement with whoever sells the house. It will be automatically, I will go to my bank, fetch my 90 days of account transaction history, and put it along. I need to go to a title company in the USA for the title. I will go to the title company, fetch it, and continue the journey. The winners of that open banking will be the winners who are able to put it all together in one place for a complete use case. And the disappointment that we saw from Open API becomes now the enthusiasm of banking as a service. We understand that it is important. The building block is important. Now the use case will play, and the winner will be whoever able to put it all together into one holistic use case. So I am disappointed. We expected more, but I'm still optimistic because of the shift that we see now in the market. And Finastra was on that path as well. We had core products, then we built the API layer, and now we're trying to build the banking as a service layer.
Sounds great. Yeah, it sounds like there's going to be a benefit to everyone on both sides for the efficiency and symbiotic.
Must be a win-win. It must be a win-win to everyone. Otherwise, it wouldn't fly. Absolutely.
So the other part of the panel, embedded finance. So Guy, embedding financial services into a digital experience can generate new revenue. Can you talk a little bit about why that is? Explain your thoughts there.
Of course, I'll talk about how that is, why that is, and actually how that can be done using Google Cloud, and actually companies that and banks that actually achieve that using Google Cloud. So as Eran has mentioned, banks have been very sluggish in implementing and actually embracing the whole BAS and embedded finance without actually other players understanding why. And that gives other players, let's call them digital first players or digital competitors, they actually go and meet the customers where they are, something that banks do not do today. Let's take Asia, for example, as a use case. Only 12 to 21% of transactions performed in Asia are actually performed using traditional FSIs, meaning new neobanks and digital players have actually managed to snag a pretty big chunk of that pie in Asia, and this is not something I'm just making up. This is backed up by a McKinsey study, and if that has managed to happen in Asia, that is bound to happen here as well. So let's talk about Singapore, for example, as a case study. It's very similar to Israel in a lot of aspects. So actually, Visa has performed a survey with Singapore, and it showed that 63% of the people in Singapore are actually open to the idea of using digital first, or let's call it new competitors in the field to perform their day-to-day transactions, their peer-to-peer transfers, to pay their bills and so on and so forth. And above that, even more astounding, 88% of SMBs, small and medium business in Singapore, are actually open and actually wanting to perform their operations using a digital first service or solution because of the sluggishness and the lack of competitiveness from they see with banks and traditional FSIs. So where does Google come here in this whole scenario? So there is a bank in Asia, as we're talking about that market. It's called BRI. This is a bank in Indonesia that has actually implemented embedded finance in a really good way, meaning they have exported all their APIs using something called Apigee or Google Apigee, which is API management system. And it's not only an API management system, which is fully managed and has a lot of benefits besides that management. Apigee can actually monetize APIs, meaning the bank can actually generate revenue from usage of those APIs. And this is no longer B2C. This is actually B2B to C or B2B to B, where the bank is generating revenue, the partner is generating revenue, and the customer benefits. The bank has generated, last year, the bank has generated $50 million in revenue from that service.
Well, thanks, guys. Yeah, things that we know seem to be changing and very rapidly at that.
Yeah.
So Eran, over to you. So given that the pace of change has been so fast, what's your prediction the way the banks will look over the next couple of years?
Banks will die. No, I'm kidding. First of all, it is important to understand that the digital channel of the bank is going to diminish. It's going to weaken, to suffer from a weakness because of the fact that, as I said before, the experience goes somewhere else. And I don't need to go to my digital channel as a retailer to see my balance. It's irrelevant anymore. I'm expecting to see my balance over Google homepage. I'm expecting to see my balance when I need to transfer money. I want to see my balance. I'm expecting that in WhatsApp I will pay you, and then I will see my balance. And I will not move to Bit in order to pay you, because if we speak on WhatsApp, I pay on WhatsApp. And I don't need to ask, do you accept Bit? Do you accept Paybox? It's irrelevant. So I am expecting that the banks will shift into outsource their financial services to the strong stickiness points where other businesses have stickiness to clients. Rami Levy, insurance companies, Kupat Cholim, doesn't matter. Anyone who manages clients is the winner that you need to collaborate with. And they will do that shift. Another thing that will happen, they will outsource the expensive operation to the smaller banks. I will give you an example. We all hear about the first digital bank that is being built in Israel. And I will give an example, not from them, but from Pepper. Pepper, that was the Bank Leumi initiative to do a digital bank. I was excited with Pepper. I wanted to open an account with Pepper. I did the onboarding, it was nice. And then I had to speak with the person so that they will do KYC and make sure that I'm a human being. And he said, okay, owner of the account. And I said, me and my wife. And he said, no, only one person can be the owner of the account. Sorry. I said, you know what? I'm with my wife together, but she has a business. So the owner will be her on her business. Say, no, sorry, we're not ready for businesses yet. What I'm trying to say is that if you want to build a proper bank with all the functions that the bank needs, then it's a huge assignment. And the systems behind the scene are complicated. Monolith, it is a hell. This is not by a chance that you don't see new insurance companies and that you don't see neobanks coming every day. And if you do see these neobanks, ask yourself, do people move the salary to these neobanks or just open an account because the card looks very nice and they actually leave the salary in the big bank? These big banks, HSBC, Citibank, the big banks that are already fully vested and they have these complicated systems with all of the capabilities. I foresee that they will outsource these capabilities to the smaller banks and they will say, you know what, you can use my infrastructure, no problem. Anyhow, I'm paying for that infrastructure. And for the small banks, it's better because the small banks are niche. They have focus. They know how to focus with foreign employees. They know how to focus on remittance. They know how to focus on small lending, whatever. And I am expecting the big banks to outsource banking as a service capabilities to the small banks so that they would be able to give better service. And it's a win-win for everyone. The heavy lifting that anyhow is happening on the banks, on the big banks, will stay there. Small banks all of a sudden find themselves with the ability to not invest in the infrastructure, but to win the use cases and the value proposition that they want to give on their niche expertise as a bank. So two things that I will say to summarize. First, diminishing the digital channel and changing that into outsourcing the financial services to the other companies, to the businesses. And second, outsourcing of the heavy lifting and the big complex systems to the smaller banks so that you will get a win-win.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the user experience will be immensely different as a result, which will be fantastic. But yeah, to your point about the infrastructure. So let's talk about the cloud. So Guy, this one's for you. So many of these traditional financial institutions are still based on legacy infrastructure that's layered and stacked over many years. So how can Google Cloud help to modernize and implement what Eran was just talking about?
Right. So in many cases that we see with FSIs, they have very old and very monolithic implementations of their systems, whether that's infrastructure, whether that's their software. And as I said before, things have been shifting within to support those traditional FSIs with purchases like Velostrata and Aluma, which are two Israeli companies that Google has purchased in the last couple of years, where Velostrata is a company that actually helps lift and shift legacy operating systems and legacy systems to the cloud without modernizing them. Just it lifts and shifts. That way, the FSI can be sure that things will continue to function just as they did before. Aluma actually helps funnel data into Google Cloud data warehouses, and the data can come from many different sources and many, let's call it legacy sources, and all their data warehouses and databases into something which is more robust, more modern, and will allow companies and FSIs to actually analyze their data and get insights of the data. Now, as I said, Velostrata actually takes the system and migrates it as is to Google Cloud to run on Google Cloud, but this is not the end goal that we actually want to lobotomize their system. We want to break it down. We want to make it a microservice-based system, a modern system, a robust system. So that's where tools like Google Anthos come into play, where Google Anthos can actually help migrate and Dockerize automatically legacy workloads and run on solutions like Kubernetes. And besides that, another thing Anthos allows is actually put a small bit of Google Cloud in the infrastructure or collocation of the FSI. Sometimes those FSIs are under heavy regulation, and sometimes the data and the system has to be located within a certain country or within a certain area or in a specific data center or rack. So Anthos actually allows us to take the great experience Google had with microservices and actually deploy that on premises and allow Google to manage your deployments on premises.
Thanks, Guy. Okay, so we're coming up to close to the end of 30 minutes. So I thought it would be great at the end if we can talk about some practical anecdotes. But yeah, just bear in mind we have about 5 minutes in total left. So Eran, first, let's go with you. Can you tell us about a use case of business as a service that you've seen?
Yes, sure. In North America, in the United States, Google, with their Google Pay application that I hope that everyone knows, has announced a project that is called Google Plex. It is connecting Google Pay with 11 banks in the US. One of them is a Finastra bank, so we are involved. And it is allowing a retailer, an individual, to open an account with one of these 11 banks, but actually do the entire experience, onboarding, know your customer, and later on, of course, to see everything from one place, which is the Google Pay application. And it is only, I believe, the beginning of a journey where Google is smart enough not to become a bank because of the heavy lifting of the regulation and what I just said before on setting it up, but smart enough to collaborate with 11 banks. And the offering is attractive. No fees, no pre-deposits, cool Google, you can imagine, debit or credit card. And of course, the entire experience, the digital channel is Google Pay app, benefits, and so on and so forth. We are involved, and I think that that would give Google, if it is, if it's going to be a success, only the beginning of doing the same thing in Europe, doing the same thing in Asia, and onboarding more and more people into that app. Later on, maybe do a bid on the on things that you search on Google for a new iPhone, and they add to it a loan offering, a bid maybe, meaning crazy opportunity for Google, crazy opportunity for a bank. So the bank that we represent is a small bank. And what's in it for me, for a bank? New clients. They belong to you. They really open an account with you, with the bank. You can later on try to upsell to them if you want. So good for the bank, good for Google, and as we said previously, good for the end user, convenient. This is the use case that we see, and it was published, so we can speak about that. And I think it's very interesting to see how it is going to evolve. After all, this is Google.
Good point. Absolutely. Okay, and then Guy, what about you? Can you share any examples about digital transformation with regards to financial institutions?
Yeah, well, Eran has talked about HSBC briefly for a moment there, so I'll continue with that. So HSBC has been running with Google for a couple of years now and have deployed a very interesting and very efficient system within Google Cloud. It's based on Google BigQuery, which is the enterprise data warehouse that Google is offering. And HSBC has more than 100 petabytes of data in BigQuery, and they have billions of transactions per day. And all those transactions are, of course, saved real time into BigQuery, and BigQuery helps HSBC analyze real time and run real time simulations into credit card frauds, money laundering, credit risks, and so on and so forth. So any branch of HSBC and any agent in HSBC can actually leverage that and understand the risks, understand the simulation of an action that they're going to take. And with that, first, they're lowering their own risk. And of course, they're providing their customers with better service.
Amazing. All right. Thanks so much for that. Okay, so in the interest of time, let's wrap up here. Thanks, Eran and Guy, for a very interesting discussion. Can definitely see that the whole financial services industry is being rethought, and the power of data as well, and what that's going to lead to. So yeah, thanks for your time, and thanks to everyone in the audience for listening in as well.
Thanks, Nicole. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.